Welcome to Palestine Nexus. My name is Stephanie Alexandra. You might recognize my voice as the narrator of the Palestine in Your Inbox newsletter. Doing something a little differently today. We thought it'd be interesting to kind of get to know who Palestine Nexus is, as well as how it started and all that jazz. So I'm joined today by Zachary Foster. I'm sure his name also sounds familiar. And Zachary Foster, who are you?
Who am I? My name is Zachary Foster. I am from Michigan, grew up in a suburb of Detroit, going to Jewish schools and summer camps and youth groups, and that got me interested in Israel. And if you get interested in Israel and you're a curious person and you have an open mind, you eventually get interested in Palestine as well. One thing led to the next. Spent some time in the Middle East, lived in Palestine for a couple of years, and learned Arabic, started doing research on the history of Palestine, the history of the Palestinian people, and ended up doing my dissertation research on the origins of a Palestinian identity. When did people start to call themselves Palestinians? In what time period and why? What were the historical factors that led people to say, I'm Palestinian? And then also the history of the idea of Palestine. Like, when did people call the place Palestine and why? And what were the historical factors that led people to call the place Palestine in history? So, that's kind of a bit about me, about kind of my background and some of the research I've done on the history of Palestine and the Palestinians.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so then when did you start Palestine Nexus?
Yeah, so Palestine Nexus started when I realized I had been, over the course of many, many years, collecting all of these maps, maps of Palestine and other places, maps that I had found in atlases that were published in the 19th century, in maps I had found in archives that I had photographed, maps that I found published in books, right? So you have many books, especially 19th, early 20th century, they're publishing these maps, kind of one-of-ones, right? So I would photograph them, and so I had this huge collection of maps, and kind of realized like these maps are like one-of-ones. They're not on the internet. No one has seen them, and they're aesthetically pleasing. They're historically valuable, and they should be more accessible. They should be available for anyone to be able to browse and download. And so I just created a website called Palestine Nexus, uploaded all the maps, and that's kind of how Palestine Nexus got started. And then at some point I realized, why would I limit myself just to maps, right? Like there's a lot of interesting historical objects beyond maps, like documents, newspapers, manuscripts, letters, personal papers, etc., and many of which I'd been collecting for my own research. Again, this is how it all started, with my own research. And so I started uploading all of my the archival documents and the newspaper records and manuscripts I had photocopied over the years. Uploaded all that stuff too, and then eventually realized, wow, why would I just upload the stuff I've collected for my own research? Why don't I also go out and look for stuff and create a real digital archive? And that's basically what happened. And so now it's really a collection. And so in addition to it being a collection of my own maps, as well as the documents I've used for my own research, I've now received collections of documents from colleagues. So there's something like 20,000 documents from British records, I think primarily relating to the history of Egypt. We have a collection of many thousands of documents related to the history from northern Syria, Alexandretta. We have Egypt, Syria, Palestine, Ottoman Empire, a lot of Ottoman documents, a lot of manuscripts that I've photographed over the years. So it's really kind of burgeoned into becoming this kind of broader archive related to documents and maps related to Middle East history.
Great. And I think it's also important to note the fact that like all of these resources that you've collected for us, and even just like your studies, right? Like you've had to learn all these different languages because it wasn't all, readily available in English, of course. So how many languages again do you speak, and how did it help with your studies?
Well, I speak one language. That's the English language. That's the language we are speaking right now. I attempt to speak a couple of other languages, Arabic, Hebrew, Turkish, Italian, and Spanish. With varying degrees of success. I think, I've always been attracted to languages. I think, especially if you want to study the history of Palestine, right? Especially if you want to study the history of Palestine during the Ottoman period, during World War I, which is really where I did a lot of my research in graduate school. You have the Ottoman Empire in charge of Palestine. You obviously have the native inhabitants of Palestine, the Palestinians. They speak Arabic. The Ottomans, of course, speak Turkish. And then you have the Zionist immigrants. They're using languages like Hebrew and German and French and English. You do need to be using these languages if you want to, I think, properly understand the history of Palestine.
Great. And well, super important for sure. So I guess another point of Palestine Nexus is that the fact that it's like growing a little bit. So for anyone who doesn't know, I'm Stephanie Alexandra, the narrator. I got in touch with Zachary because I was looking at ways to help, to be of, support to the Palestinian liberation. And it wasn't enough for me I live in a very small town. So being able to, I can't put myself at the forefront of, wherever they're manufacturing weapons and stuff like that. Like I'm just very isolated. So, education is a form of activism. So I definitely am a fan of his newsletters and thought it could be put into an audio version. So that's where we're at. And we're also joined now by a video editor, a very talented video editor called Alexandria Shaw. So very thankful for her. In addition to like what's going on, like how else do you see Palestine Nexus potentially growing?
Palestine Nexus started as a digital archive. Now it's a digital archive in addition to being a newsletter, which has audio and video formats as well. So it's growing, it's expanding. We're trying new formats, expanding into new mediums, and also wanting to grow the team as well. I think the next frontier is going to be more educational materials. The newsletter, I think, is great for staying abreast with the current events and the news and the headlines. Also, the history we cover, not just what's happening today, but also we try to provide historical context for what's happening today. And but I think I would like to move more into educational materials as well. Not strictly speaking commentary and analysis, but more so Israel Palestine 101, the history of Zionism, the history of the Israel-Palestine question. And so we hope to be launching a course in the next few weeks. Don't hold me to that. And that course would cover things like myths and propaganda, right? What are some of the most common myths that are circulating about the history of Palestine and the Palestinians? They would cover the history of Zionism. It would cover the history of the Israel-Palestine question itself. When did the violence start? Why is there violence in Israel-Palestine? And so I think we will be launching that course. We will also talk a lot about the role of the United States and other powers as well. But I think the focus would be the role of the United States in the Palestine question, because the United States has played an outsized role in the Palestine question to begin with, and so I think it's incumbent upon all of us, those who aren't living in Palestine, who are living abroad, to better understand what impact our governments have had in the region and what we can do. And maybe the last piece I would add to that is activism, right? We're gonna definitely focus as well on activism. What can we all do, right? How can we have an impact? We can produce educational materials, but there are other things we can do as well. We can protest. We can lobby our elected officials. Right. We can direct action. We can spread the word. We can share content on social media. We can convince our family and friends through the power of the pen and the power of persuasion. So there's a lot we can all do, and I think it's incumbent upon us to help everyone understand what they can do individually.
Awesome. And I think it'd be also great to maybe also showcase some like Palestinian voices as well, right? I don't know. Do you have any in mind that?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the goals with Palestine Nexus is to try and shine a spotlight on the people, the Palestinians, who have been completely shut out from the mainstream narrative, certainly in places like the United States and Canada, right? There was a study conducted by Maha Nasser just a couple of years ago, published in Plus 972, where she looks at New York Times, Washington Post, Boston Globe, The Nation, The New Republic, maybe a couple of others. And she looks at articles published about Palestinians and discovers that almost none of them are written by Palestinians, right? So Palestinians don't have a voice. And I think one of the goals of Palestine Nexus is to give Palestinians a voice, is to highlight Palestinian stories, to highlight Palestinian perspectives. And so that is very much a part of what we want to do here, is bring Palestinians onto the show, onto the newsletter, as guest authors, as guest contributors, as interviewees, so that, you know, you're not hearing about Palestine from like us, just that it's we very much want to highlight, you know, the people who have been subject to so much horrific violence over the past many decades. We want them to be able to tell their own stories.
Absolutely, I'm definitely looking forward to that. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I would just say, if you were interested in contributing to Palestine Nexus as a guest writer, as a guest author, maybe you have video editing skills, maybe you have audio chops, maybe you're an activist, and maybe you're something else that I haven't mentioned. We would love to be in touch, because we are trying to grow the team. We want to produce more educational content. We want to write not just once a week, but every day, and produce videos not just once a week, but every day, and produce audio not just once a week, but every day. So if you have any interest in any of those things, definitely reach out to us. We would love to hear from you.
All right. Thank you so much. Please let us know your thoughts, and if you have any questions that can be answered in upcoming episodes via PalestineNexus@gmail.com.